Tonight, I'm going to be talking about a topic, and I don't want you guys to look at tonight as a lecture. Please, I'm not trying to lecture you tonight. What I want to do is I want to provide something, a recipe. If you want to apply it, I promise you will change your life, will transform your life. On another level, if we were to apply it collectively, we'll transform the ummah. The more people that apply this principle and what we're going to talk about, the more you start to see the world change. And if you realize the topic of tonight is what? The topic, if you realize that there was specific wording. I said, who do we need to become to be great fathers or husbands? Let me go again. Who do we need to become to be men that Imam al-Mahdi will be proud of? That is the question. Now, focus on the terminology that I use. I didn't say, what do we need to do to be people that Imam Mahdi will be proud of? I said, who do we need to become? Because ultimately, we're looking at, there's a big difference between doing and being. And we're looking at who you want to be in society. And in society, unfortunately, a lot of the time, the focus is put on what? On what are you doing? What are you achieving? What are the expectations? Are you fulfilling your expectations? Right? Are you making X amount of money? Are you buying a house? And you grow up and you're trying to fill these expectations of what do you want to do? And you lose track of who do you want to be. So that is the focus for tonight. Remember, we're human beings, not human doings. Ultimately, we want to unravel that. But the truth is, you don't change. True change doesn't come by just changing your actions and your behavior. It's like, for example, who here has ever tried to battle a bad habit? And you've tried to battle that bad habit with willpower. You work for a bit, but then it's short-lived, it dies out. Ultimately, what true change, if you want to see long-lasting change, you don't want to change the behavior, you want to change who you are, the core of the person behind the behavior. So inshallah, tonight and next week, so the next 2 weeks are going to be put together into one topic. We're going to be exploring two fundamental principles. Not values, not ideas, and not thoughts. Principles. Principles that if you apply them, they'll revolutionize your life. And keep in mind, a principle isn't a tip or a trick. I'm not telling you, hey, this is a skill that I have and I'm going to pass it on to you. And if you apply it, no, we're talking about a principle that is applied in every scenario, every situation. So for example, you might have certain skills or ways of communicating with your friends, certain ways of communicating with your parents, certain ways of communicating with your colleagues at work, right? But when you have a principle, it's something you apply in every single scenario that you're in, you always apply this principle. So tonight we're going to be focusing on the first principle. And this principle, my brothers, is fundamental as it changes how we approach our life. This first principle is called being proactive. Inshallah, we're going to unpack it more. I'm going to give you a lot of examples and strategies and so on. The talk might be a bit longer than usual tonight, but I promise it's packed of value if you stay tuned in, all right? The principle is what Stephen Covey mentions in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's the first habit. He says there are 7 habits every human being, if you were to acquire them, you'll achieve a high level of effectiveness as an individual. The first habit, all of them are built off the first habit. If you don't have the first principle, all of the other principles don't matter. And that is taking absolute accountability for your life. That is recognizing that you are the author of your story. You don't want to be a character in another person's script. Being proactive means you are the one that writes your story. Of course, biyadillah. We're not saying you without God, wa'yadu billah, independent from God. We're saying you, your behavior and your actions with the tawfiq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, inshallah, next week we're going to talk about the second principle. I'm not going to mention it tonight. We'll leave it for then. We'll leave it as a cliffhanger, inshallah. So let's give our full attention, inshallah, to this. Now, I know someone might be thinking, all right, taking responsibility, we've heard this before, taking accountability. How is this really going to make me a better father or a better husband? Like, how are they related? It's a fair question. And the answer is, because this principle doesn't just change what you do, it changes who you are. That means when you change who you are, everything else changes. When you start to live your life by a new principle that you haven't been living your life by, then you start to see this apply in every side and every aspect of your life. When we're talking about being proactive, the first point we're going to do is we're firstly going to understand it. Bless you. We're going to understand proactivity. I'm going to break it down for you in a way, inshallah, that will help you have an analogy in your mind to always be able to refer back to. When we're talking about being proactive, that means there is something you are not. If I'm asking you to be something, that means I'm trying to tell you to refrain from being another type of person. What are the two different types of people? I personally, in my life, I've experienced, there was a major time in my life where I was this category, and my life shifted when I moved from this category to this category. This category, the category, they call it in NLP, yeah, when we're studying NLP, we study people, there's below the line, imagine a line, there's below the line and above the line. Below the line is the reactive category. It's the person who lives in this world in a reactive manner. It's like being a leaf in the wind. The wind takes it, it goes. Circumstances impact you. Hardship impacts you. People's actions, your own emotions. You're like a leaf. You're just going with the wind. The wind takes you this way, you go this way. You react to the environment. You're not the curator of the environment. You're just a bystander in the environment. And a lot of people that are in this category, inshallah, I'm going to give a lot of examples on the language that you use. If a person uses certain language, you know what category he's in. If he's below the line or he's above the line. If he's above the line, he's a proactive individual. Being above the line is you being the wind, not the leaf. Being above the line, being a proactive individual, is you are the one that moves the leaves the way you want. It's the force, it's when you become the force that moves and shapes the environment. You're not just responding passively to life. Life isn't just happening and you're just passing by. You're part of you're playing a huge role. So, and I'll give you an example. Someone will come, and I'm going to start from now on, I'm going to start asking you, is this proactive or reactive language? For example, someone's driving or someone wakes up and say, bro, it's raining today, bro. I hate when it's raining, but I just feel ugly when it's raining. Is that proactive or reactive? Reactive. If you're going to base how you feel in your day and your mindset on the weather, which is something you can't control, you're reacting to the environment. A proactive person brings his weather with him. Like whether it's sunny, I'll find the good things to do. Whether it's rainy, I'll know what to do. I know how to adapt to rain. I know how to adapt to cloud. I know how to adapt when it's cold. I know how to adapt when it's hot. So a proactive person is like the wind. Now, I know you might be thinking, all right, so the reactive person is someone that focuses on things that he can't control. And the proactive person is a person that thinks and focuses on the thing that he can control. But you might be asking or thinking, but there's so many things, Muhammad, that you can't control. That's the reality of life. The reality of life, there is so much in life that I can't control. And you're telling me I'm not going to think about this, and I tell you, you're right. You can't control everything. But the key is proactivity isn't about control. Being above the line or being a proactive individual, it's not about controlling external circumstances. It's about being able to control your response to the external circumstance. I'm going to give a powerful analogy and example in a moment, and it's going to make so much more sense. But being able to say, I can control whether it rains or not, you can't. But can you control how you react to the fact that it's raining? Yes, you can. And I'm sure on many occasions, there are times where certain things that if I were to get two different experiences that you've had, one time you reacted in one way, and another time you reacted in a whole different way, but they were the same experience. So it's the reaction that we're talking about. Let me give you an example that you can relate to. Imagine you're stuck in traffic. You're late to work, you're late to an important meeting, you're late to an exam, whatever it is, yeah? Let's see, how does a reactive person respond? And how does a proactive person respond? I'm going to ask you now, how does a reactive person respond to being late and being stuck in traffic? Give me an example. What would they do? What would a reactive person do?
What are you doing?
What are you doing? What else? Speed. All right, what else? But you're stuck in traffic, you can't really speed. What else? You start beeping, you start complaining, you start swearing at other people, right?
Did I look for a resident?
How do you arrive as a reactive person? How do you arrive to your meeting? Stressed, angry? Yeah, exactly. We'll edit that out, don't worry. A proactive person, instead, a proactive person will say, all right, I'm late. Firstly, I should have left earlier. I should have taken into consideration that, there's going to be traffic. I'll call ahead. I'm going to call my boss or call the person I'm meeting with, bro. Sorry, I'm running late. There's whatever traffic. And I'm going to use the time from now till I get to mentally prepare myself for this meeting, to get myself into the state. And when I arrive, I'm going to be ready emotionally, mentally, and physically to contribute. A proactive person will look at the situation and say, I can't control whether there's traffic or not. I could control whether I wake up earlier. So when I call, what's the difference between a proactive and a reactive person? A reactive person will say, bro, there's so much traffic, it's not my fault, blah, 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 blah. A proactive person will say, bro, I'm late, I should have left earlier, I got stuck in traffic, it's my fault. Yes, there's going to be the off chances where there's going to be an accident and you're held back. But still, claiming responsibility and claiming as much as you can accountability will always raise you in the eyes of the other person. No one likes a reactive individual, although we're all reactive. Like in the state of giving excuses, no one really thinks highly of people that's always giving excuses, right? Think about someone that you know that's always excuse upon excuse. Can you just say, bro, sometimes even if you're right, bro, just take responsibility. Wallah, even if you're saying the right thing. So a proactive person and a reactive person, their outlook on life is completely different. Same situation, both of them are stuck in traffic, but they're both different outcomes. Why is this important? Because ultimately, there are many circumstances in life, most of the time in life, you're not going to have control over the outcome. You're not going to have control over the circumstance. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, this is a very powerful verse that brings this point home on the point, on the ball. He says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not change the condition of a people until they begin the change from within themselves. If you're seeking transformation, don't sit down and just, Ya Allah, make me patient. Ya Allah, make me fit. Ya Allah, make me rich. Ya Allah, make me smart. No, you have to proactively design this in your life. God won't change the condition of the people, of the society, or the people as individuals unless they initiate that change proactively, unless they're proactive with the changes. That's what he's referring to. حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ, meaning so they take initiative, they become proactive, and they initiate the change from within themselves. طيب, let's get practical and let's look at how it would look in our life. A proactive student doesn't wait for the exam time to start studying. A proactive student says, all right, definitely I've got exams in 3 months' time. Let me start preparing. I'm going to set a time schedule. I'm going to work on X amount per Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So when exam time comes, I'm ready mentally and emotionally and psychologically. I'm ready for this exam. Proactive response. And for example, if someone, this is a beautiful example. Dr. Stephen Covey mentions this. He says there was a company, a CEO, where he was a very, very switched on CEO. But he used to treat all of his employees and all of his directors like he uses the term gophers. Basically, he tells them, go for this, go do this, go do that. He doesn't give them a responsibility. He tells them, do this and do that. Now, all of these guys are sick of their boss, basically. It's like, bro, like, respect us. You know what I mean? Like, why do you treat us like that? And, you start to have these conversations with each other. These, Stephen Covey says, next to the water bubbler conversations where they're backbiting and talking about, oh my God, did you hear what he said in the last meeting? Blah, blah, blah. Except for one individual. One of these people on the board, he comes and he tells, he sees the type of character this CEO is. So he doesn't expect anything from him. Instead, he goes by himself proactively. He starts to go do his own research. He starts to bring the data and starts to analyze the data and do work by himself. He goes out of his way. And one day, Dr. Stephen Covey is sitting with his director. He's saying, I was sitting with him in a consulting capacity. And the CEO told me, you would not believe this employee that I have. He says, he's brilliant, Stephen. He's brilliant. He says, when we get to the meetings, he does the research, he gets all the data, he puts the analysis, he gets my research, he sees how the data he's provided and the summaries he's provided is linked to the research, and it's so brilliant. Eventually, what does this CEO do? In his meeting, he tells his employees, go for this, go for this, go for this, go for this. And then he goes to this person and says, what's your opinion? Because this person was proactive, he didn't react to the situation. For example, if a brother wants to get married, since we're talking about marriage and that's one of the part of the topic, the core of the topic, you want to get married. A reactive brother will say, I'm waiting for the right time to get married. A proactive brother says, all right, I'm not ready right now, but there's so much I have to work on right now for me to get ready to be married. Let me work on these steps. Let me work on developing positive habits, on strengthening my character, preparing myself to be a great husband, great father. Even though I know I can't get married now, it's not practical. But it doesn't mean I react to the environment and just wait for it to happen. Of saying I want a woman that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Wallah, she has to look good, has to have a good akhlaq, comes from a good family, blah 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 blah, and have all of these check boxes. I say, what type of man do I have to become to attract this type of woman that I want? That's a proactive response. So being proactive is about taking initiative, about taking responsibility, and being the author, making things happen rather than watching things happen. And I promise you, it's not as easy as it sounds. It's not easy to just be proactive, because our natural tendency as humans is to be reactive. Our natural tendency, it's easier for us, it requires less thought and mental pressure to be proactive, to be reactive. Being proactive is a challenge. You need to be aware, you need to have self-control, you need to have vision. So what's the point of trying? If it's easier for me to be reactive, then what's pushing me to be proactive? And I'll tell you this, it's because the reward of being a proactive individual is something that cannot, and it's something that cannot be replaced. It's something invaluable. Because if you have more control over yourself, you're more prepared for challenges, you're more respected by others, you're more satisfied with yourself, but more importantly, you're more aligned with your goal that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put for you. And we've spoken about this in Muharram, we went deeper on this. When we spoke about the goal of man is to be the Khalifa of God, the goal of the human being is to be the Khalifa, the representative of Allah. To do this, you need to be a responsible individual. وَأَنَّ لَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, and there is not for man except the good which he strives for. You want to see good? It's got to be embodied in the proactive response that you have. Now, just to sweeten things up, I want to give you a powerful example from the story of Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam. Look at the Holy Quran. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reaches the story of Nabi Yusuf, He says, وَنَحْنُ نَقُصُّ عَلَيْكَ أَحْسَنَ الْقَصَصِ بِمَا أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ هَذَا الْقُرْآنِ وَإِن كُنْتَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ لَمِنَ الْغَافِلِينَ. Look at what He says, bros. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying this story is of the best stories. So in the Holy Quran, how many stories there are? Nabi Yusuf's story is the best story. The sequencing of the story is perfect. Now in this story, you look at Nabi Yusuf. Look at this ride that Nabi Yusuf had. Nabi Yusuf is born and he's got how many brothers? How many brothers? 11 brothers. He's got 11 brothers, okay? From these 11 brothers, he's of the youngest. He's betrayed by his brothers that he loves, yeah? Imagine, this by itself, he's betrayed by his brothers and thrown in the well, then sold into slavery. Then after he's become a slave to Potiphar, the Pharaoh, the king of the time, then he faces a big trial of his desire, and Zulaykha is trying to seduce him. Then he's wrongfully imprisoned. Okay, let's look at these steps. When he's betrayed by his brothers, what does he do? Does he become spiteful? Does he become angry and resentful? Does he be like, fuck, I can't believe these blokes did this, and start hating them? No. He says, Ya Allah, he starts crying. I cannot believe that my brothers have sinned by putting me in the well. How is my father going to forgive them? When he's in the well, at the bottom of the well, is he crying and swearing at his brothers and being resentful? No. He's praying to God, preparing himself. Tayyib, he's safe from the well. He's sold into slavery. Is he resentful and angry and spiteful? Does he have pity on himself? No. When he becomes a slave in the palace of Potiphar, thousands of slaves, they have thousands of slaves, yeah? Yeah, all of them are living under the bunkers and they're all, in the worst of situations and they're hating life. What's Nabi Yusuf doing? Proactive, doing his job to the best of his abilities, being excellent to the extent where the king, the Potiphar falls in love with him, to the extent where Zulaykha falls in love with him. Nabi Yusuf is beautiful. What do they start to do? They start to test him with his beauty. And then he's put in a situation where he tries to get seduced. His spirituality then is under attack. Nahna, sure, what happens to us? Like a girl walks past us and say, Ya Allah, it's not my fault, she walked past me. You know what I mean? You scroll through Instagram and you see a girl and you start to get lustful desires. Bro, شو بدي أعمل طيب? He came in front of me. We live in the West. Huh? We live in Australia. Okay. He was standing in a room. Zulaykha came and basically almost forced herself on him. And he says, Ma'ad Allah. He says, Ma'ad Allah. I'm by myself. And he's like, hold on a second. Innahu Rabbi ahsana mathway. I seek refuge in Allah. Proactive. He is my master. And what is the cost of this? What's the price of this? He's sticking staunch. He's being responsible. The price is prison for 9 years. What does he do in prison? Does he sit down and get depressed and become anxious and start saying, Ya Allah, why'd you do this to me? No. He turns the prison into a heaven. The people in prison all become muwahideen. All of them become Muslim. The prisoners, what do they end up becoming? They become the preachers for Nabi Yusuf eventually. And then Nabi Yusuf leaves the prison. Because his proactiveness, he interprets the dreams. Then he's sent, and then he becomes the governor of Egypt, where Allah took him from slavery to the highest point in Egypt. And Nabi Yusuf was the most proactive individual. Every single step in the life of Nabi Yusuf, every decision was that of absolute focus on his response to the circumstance. Any one of us experienced one of the above. If one of us was sold into slavery, or put in a well by his brothers and betrayed by his brothers, or put in a room with a beautiful girl, Allahu Akbar. You know what I mean? Any one of us experienced any of these, would we be proactive? Inshallah. Most likely, we might react to this situation. Nabi Yusuf, because he unlocked that principle within him, because it was embedded within him, that proactivity brought him from slavery to governorship without anyone knowing that he was Joseph or Yusuf. It's the example of the two guys that had an alcoholic father. Have you heard of this? You guys know this one? Yeah? I'll repeat it for those that don't know. Two brothers that had an alcoholic father. One of the brothers was extremely successful and the other brother became an alcoholic. They asked both of them, why did you guys become what you did? Why did you become successful? And why did you become an alcoholic? And what did they both say? Because my father was an alcoholic. See, but both of them had the same circumstance, yet they both had two different reactions, two different outcomes. So, and I'll be real with you, like we said, it's not easy to be proactive, but ultimately, if you were to unlock that quality within you, that principle, you start to become in more power and control, and you are now more well equipped to fulfill your purpose, as a husband, as a father, as a leader in the community, but also as a representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Imam Mahdi. Imam Mahdi doesn't want a reactive person. Imam Mahdi wants the highest form of proactivity. He wants people that are ready. Men that are ready to claim responsibility. Don't come and give me excuses. Don't be like a leaf. I want you to be like the wind. Powerful concept, inshallah. This is like a visual way for you guys to understand and remember this concept of being proactive. It's shared by Dr. Stephen Covey also in the 7 Habits, in the first habit, which is the habit of being proactive. And this is where he talks about the circle of influence and the circle of concern. The concept, the idea of the circle of influence and circle of concern is a very powerful one. Your circle of influence or your circle of concern includes everything. So imagine we've got your circle of concern is everything that you care about that you have absolutely no control over. Think about, for example, if you think about what's happening in Palestine, do you care about that? Yes. Do you have control over it? No. Okay, you put that there. Think about the weather. Do you care about that? Probably. If you work and you have things going on, can you control that? No. Economy. The economy. Care about it? Yes. Can you control it? No. Okay. What people think of you. Do you care about it? Can you control it? Can you control what people think of you?
No.
So it's in your circle of concern. Yeah. What people think of you is in your circle of concern. How you react to it is in your circle of control. Okay? So when we're looking at the circle of concern, it's everything that you care about, but that you have no control over. The circle of influence is smaller. The circle of influence, it includes everything that you can actually affect. It includes your behavior, it includes your skills, it includes your relationships, it includes your ibadah. your ibadah, your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is that in my hands or in your hands? It's in your hands. That's in your circle of influence or concern? Influence. Proactive individual is someone that focuses on his circle of influence and grows his circle of influence. A reactive individual is someone that's infatuated and impacted by his circle of concern and shrinks his circle of influence. Is that clear? Does that make sense? So, a proactive person is always, instead, when he's put in a situation, when he's put in a circumstance, the first question he asks himself, of this whole circumstance, what variables am I in control of, and what variables am I not in control of? Once you become clear on that, you start expanding your circle. For example, the example that we gave you before of the guy that was in that company. See, all of them, the other workers, were in the circle of concern. Say, oh, I can't believe he's treating us like this and micromanaging us and blah, blah, blah. They were focusing on the things they care about, but they have no control over. They can't control what the CEO does. They can't control how he treats them. Whereas that employee said, I can control whether I do that extra data, I can control whether I do that extra research, and I'm going to do it. Eventually, he started doing that to the extent where he starts to get into that meeting, and now it gets to the point, I didn't continue the story just for time, it gets to the point where this guy reaches such a high level in the company that no shot is made in the company without his approval, because he increased his circle of influence. But in the beginning, he was nothing. So, if you want to make a huge difference, this is where you start to change. You start to make that change from within yourself. You start by saying, all right, my behavior, my actions. This, for example, I'm late. What could I have done differently? This person's, and I'm going to give more practical examples in a moment on how you can apply it in your life. But you start to have this language. Am I thinking above the line or below the line? Am I using proactive language or reactive language? Am I focusing on my circle of influence or my circle of concern? This is stuff you want to start talking to yourself about. This principle, if you want to embed it within you, you want to start thinking about these things in the background. Now, inshallah, I'm going to give you some practical applications and how it can be applied to different scenarios in your life, and give you an example of a reactive person and a proactive person. Then I'm going to give you 5 steps on how to become a proactive individual, and then we'll conclude the talk and open up. If I was to ask you guys, do you know what being proactive is? You know the answer? Okay, you've understood what being proactive is. You've understood the circle of influence and circle of concern. Okay. Now I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to give you exactly, to be precise, 6 examples. 1 for spirituality, 1 for your studies or your career, 1 for your relationships, 1 for your personal development, 1 for considering marriage, whoever's considering marriage, and 1 for who's ever married. I'm the only one that's married here, but inshallah you apply it to your life, all right? How does a reactive person approach spirituality, and how does a proactive person approach spirituality? A reactive person prays only when they're in trouble, when they're feeling guilty. Or they have to pray. It's wajib now. What the salah? I'm going to pray. A proactive person establishes a consistent prayer routine regardless of how they feel. Regardless of their emotional state, they set reminders and they try and develop a relationship with God even when things are good. Even when things are going their way. In your studies and in your career, a reactive person, what do they do? What does a reactive person do when it comes to studies? They cram before their exams. Yeah. In your career, what do? You wait for your boss. If your boss doesn't, who he works in construction. All right, you all work in construction. Now, you have 2 workers. One worker waits for you to tell me, Malik, what am I doing today? And you have to tell him every single thing. And if you don't tell him, he sits there on the side and just waits for you to tell him. Whereas you have another person that's always looking to do something. You don't tell him to do something, you find him cleaning the floor and getting the nabrish and packing up tools without you telling him. How much do you value this person? Huge. If you were to say, what is the percentage of this person succeeding versus this person succeeding? 100%. Because it's a principle. Aktar min hek. How do you think this person acts at home if he acts like this on the job site? It's a principle. You apply it whether you're at home, whether you're on the job site. If I see a person like that, then I will know that if this person is walking past rubbish in their house, then they're most likely going to pick it up and not wait for someone to do it. They're proactive. They take that initiative. Okay. Relationship. A reactive person will wait till the resentment hits the roof and the anger hits the roof and everyone's screaming at everyone to come and say, yeah, my problem with you is this. A proactive person is always checking in. Bro, is everything all right? Like, I remember I said this and I felt like you got upset. Is everything okay? Or a husband will come to the spouse, you know, I see you feeling angry today or upset today, you're overreacting. Is everything all right? They'll try and initiate and try and find solutions before things hit the roof. That's a proactive person. In personal development, a reactive person waits to be motivated and for other people to push them. A proactive person sets goals, creates habits, you know, aligns themselves, creates a vision of who they want to be. I'll give you an example of a proactive person. I'll tell you how I know he's proactive. Very simple. His father was just showing me the musalla right now, and he just wanted to show me his room. And I saw his room. Sorry for saying this, by the way, but it's just practical. It's on the spot. And I saw his room. I'm like, this is a proactive person. Instantly, I know he's proactive. By the way he set his environment, I know for a fact he's proactive. Am I right or wrong? I'm right, aren't I? Yeah? Just by understanding how he manufactures his environment, I know he's a proactive individual. Okay? So your personal development doesn't wait for motivation. You create that motivation. But what do I mean by what? No, if you see his room, you understand what I mean. Everything is set up and everything is designed, environment is designed in a way that keeps you focused on the task. You've got the calendar when you need it. You've got the vision board when you need it. You've got the visual cues to remind you of what your goals are. You've got the books that are relevant to your goals. You've got everything is neat. Everything is there. Because when you enter this place, your mind needs to be absorbed by your goal. That's a proactive individual. Okay, but I don't want to go too deep into that. For husbands, for example, husbands and fathers, if we're talking about being, who do we need to become to be great husbands and fathers? A great husband doesn't wait for the report card to come and the teachers are going off at their student, at their kid because they're misbehaving. No, a proactive father takes initiative and says, all right, what's going on with my child? What are the issues that you're going through? They anticipate the needs of their spouse. You don't wait for your wife to tell you, can you do this, can you do this, can you do this, can you do that? You anticipate their need. I feel like she's going to want this. And you do it. You take initiative. A proactive husband sees the dishes dirty and his wife's been working all day and tired and goes, does the dishes and doesn't tell her about it. Maybe ربيها جميلة. Yeah? Doesn't wait for her to ask him to do the dishes. Yeah? And it's not demeaning to do that. You see house chores, you see the kids are going crazy. You want to become very aware and conscious of the emotions of your spouse and take them into consideration. That's what a proactive husband does. But boys, I want to keep this as a very important note as well, that being proactive isn't about being perfect, because we're all going to fall into reactive. We're all going to fall below the line. Every single one of us is reactive at nature, but we're also proactive. We have the ability to be proactive. The only difference is it doesn't take effort to be reactive. It takes effort to be proactive. Whereas being reactive is an automatic response. And there are times where you're going to get angry. There are times where you're going to get pissed off. There are times where you're going to feel lonely. There are times where you're going to feel depressed. There are going to be times where you're not going to be motivated. It's normal. The goal isn't to be perfect. The goal is to become conscious that you have the choice to choose the things that will help you focus on your circle of influence. Because the longer you stay in the circle of concern, the smaller the circle of influence shrinks. And I'll give you a very practical example. Let's say I have no problem, and I'm going to say this, I have no problem with psychologists. I've seen psychologists. There's no problem with psychologists. But one often issue I see with people that are seeing psychologists is they go to a psychologist and they talk and they talk and they talk and they talk about their problem, and they never even think about, all right, what is the solution? So they focus on their circle of concern, circle of concern, circle of concern, circle of concern, until the circle of influence no longer exists. A proactive person understands the problem, goes to the trauma, goes to the issue, but not to dwell on it, to build on it, to go and say, what is the proactive response? How am I going to respond to this situation? How am I going to act? All right, Khayyar, I was treated like 1, 2, 3, and 4. I wasn't dealt the best cards. My parents treated me like this. My dad didn't treat me the best way. He wasn't around that much. You know, this person, all right, I'm going to sit down and blame everyone. I'm going to sit down for the rest of my life and blame my mom and blame my dad and blame my circumstances, blame my upbringing, blame my childhood and blame that accident. And is that what I'm going to do? No. Okay, that happened. And I understand its impact on me. A proactive individual says, all right, now what? Now that that's happened, now what? What do I have control over now? Do I have to stay that individual? Just because my father beat me when I was young, does that mean I have to beat myself up and beat my children up? Masala. Proactive response. طيب. So, from now on, I want you guys to think, inshallah, from moving forward, I want you guys to think about one area of your life, each and every one of you. Think about one area of your life where you know you've been reactive. And I want you to ask yourself, you don't have to answer this to me, but I want you to ask yourself, how can you shift this in this category from being reactive to being proactive starting today, not tomorrow, today. In your mind, you make a promise that you start today. If you have exams, for example, and you want to overcome that procrastination, I'm going to start setting schedules. You want to start going to the gym and becoming more consistent. These are the times I'm going to go to the gym. These are the days I'm going to go to the gym. These are the times I can go to the gym. You want to start that diet, you want to save that money, you want to start that business, whatever it is. Or for example, you feel like you're not managing your emotions properly. Maybe some of us are reacting to our desires and our lust. Yeah? If you feel like maybe masturbation's a problem or any of these problems, all right, what am I going to do about it? Am I going to sit down and talk about, oh my God, I can't believe I have this addiction? No, delete Instagram, bro. I'm going to delete TikTok. That's the proactive approach. A proactive approach is I look at, this is the issue right now, this is the trigger right now, and what's in my control. I don't have control. If I go on this social media platform, I have no control. I'm going to see this girl, I'm going to see cleavage. It's just going to pop up. I have no control over what pops up because, alhamdulillah, the algorithms are made to keep me sucked in. What do I have control over? Whether I hold the Instagram or not. Whether I actually have the app or not. That's what I have control over. So from now on, I want you to focus on one area. Each and every one of you has a different area. It may be similar, it may be the same. Think of one area that you know you're reactive in and make a vow to yourself that I'm going to shift from reactive to proactive. And if you want to learn how to do that practically, let's delve into the 5 steps. These are my personal 5 steps that I've used, I've helped other people use, and inshallah, I'm going to pass on to you so you can begin to use them these are going to be your roadmap, essentially, to start implementing the proactive personality and the proactive character. Step 1. I'm going to ask you guys about these steps, so you better be tuned in, yeah? Step 1. You want to create a gap between stimulus and response. I'm going to explain what this is. The first step is you pause before you respond. That's just a step. Try and remember that. And I'm going to give you an example. Dr. Viktor Frankl, in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, he says that, and mind you, for those that don't know, very powerful book. I highly suggest the book. Dr. Viktor Frankl was a Holocaust survivor, and he was put in the Nazi concentration camps in Auschwitz, and he was a psychiatrist, and he was a professor of psychiatry. And his parents, his family, his wife, and his kids, they were all killed and burnt alive, essentially, in Nazi Germany. And he was placed in one of these concentration camps. And he says when he was in this concentration camp, he starts to document and psychoanalyze the inmates that were in the concentration camp. But the thing about Dr. Viktor Frankl is he never gave control over how he reacts to the prisoner, what do they call them, the guards. And they used to subject him to the worst of situations. The worst situations. They would, bad they say we felt like we weren't even human anymore. Like the way they used to treat them. They'd go for weeks without food, without water, whatever. Long story. But as much as they tried, they could not break Dr. Viktor Frankl. He was always envisioning and visualizing, and he had hope and he had love. I'm not going to go into the reasons why they couldn't break him, but he says this. He says, I figured out in this context, in this scenario, I figured out the last of the human freedoms. The last human freedom, that's something that no one could take away from you, even when you were captive in the Nazi concentration camp. Look at today, for example, the Palestinians, yeah, the people in Gaza. This freedom, they're in a concentration camp, basically, yeah, and they're subject to the worst, worse than Nazi Germany, worse than the Holocaust. Yeah, there's this freedom that no one can take from them, and this is, he says, between stimulus, i.e., between what happens to you and what you do about it, there's a gap. There's a moment. There's a split second. A split second, and that is the last of your human freedom. And that is the power to choose how you want to respond in any given situation. Now, what happens over time is we learn a lot of our responses. We learn how to respond to anger. We learn how to respond to frustration. We learn how to respond to envy. We learn how to respond to greed. We learn how to respond to lust and desire and. We learn how to respond. And we condition that response. But in reality, you have the choice to respond like that. So the first thing you want to do, if you want to become a proactive individual, is you need to be able to create distance between what happens to you and how you respond to it. Once you're able to create that distance, now you're creating self-control. Now you're able to control your reaction, because if someone beeps at me and I instantly react with you and swear, yeah, if I'm able to stop it before I react, he beeps at me, I take a deep breath, I say, maybe he's in a rush. Maybe maybe he just really needs to go to the toilet. Maybe it was an accident. So before I react with anger, I pause and I de-escalate. And I allow myself to choose my response. All right, how do I want to respond like this right now? I'll give you a personal example in my life. Who are you guys? I don't know if you guys were there. A couple of years ago, we were at Masjid. I was reading Dua al-Jawshan. Was anyone there? I was reading Dua al-Jawshan, and a Hajj stops me mid-recitation. Literally, mid-recitation, thousands of people, Laylatul Qadr packed. Packed, Laylatul Qadr packed. I'm reading, and the boys had asked me to come and sit there in front wherever I read, and I'm reading, and this Hajj comes, he didn't know I was supposed to read, snatches the mic off me, goes off at me, people that were there and they witnessed it, goes off at me in front of everyone in the mosque, passes it on. How do I react to this situation? How do you react to this situation? Honestly, put yourself in that position. How do you react? Do you get up and leave? Does your face become red and you get embarrassed and angry and shy? Is that what you're supposed to do? For example, it wasn't the right time for it. Huh? You know what I did? I took a deep breath before I responded, because I felt really very embarrassed in that moment. Took a deep breath, and Wallah al-Azim, I still remember the exact thought process. Wallah al-Azim. Because a lot of things happened at that period, and I'm not going to go too deep into it. I want to use this as an example. I paused in that moment, I took a deep breath, and I said to myself, Ya Allah, what are you trying to teach me right now? It changed everything. It changed all of my response. I asked myself that question, Ya Allah, what are you trying to teach me right now? What is the lesson in this? I didn't get up. I didn't leave. I didn't cause a fuss. I kept a smile on my face. I stayed down. I stayed to the end of the dua. I acted like nothing happened. I shook everyone's hand. What did I focus on? My circle of control, my circle of influence, yeah? I stayed in my circle of influence. I can't control what everyone's thinking, what this person's doing. I stayed. Eventually, everyone's coming. Everyone now is feeling bad. Everyone is feeling embarrassed. The Hajj is embarrassed. They're going off and telling him off. And I didn't say anything. Wallah al-Azim, not one word to anyone. Yeah? And then this Hajj comes and he's starting to apologize. The heads of the mosque are starting to apologize. This person is coming. They're feeling embarrassed. They come, they call me. Now, since that moment, every single Laylatul Qadr, I've been in single Laylatul Qadr. They ask me, please come give a talk. Please give a 5, 10, 15-minute talk in Laylatul Qadr. You know what that means? On the night that's the most busiest in Shahr Ramadan and of the year. In the masjid, it's the busiest night of the year. And I have them always asking me to come. Why? Because I focus on the circle of influence. I'm not saying this to brag, Allah bishad, wallah, I'm not. The point of this story is to say, in that moment, you have to pause. If I was to respond instantly, I would have gotten up and left. I stopped, took a deep breath. Step 2, take responsibility for your emotional state. Don't blame other people for how you feel. Akra alayya. When someone comes and says, bro, you made me feel angry. You made me feel angry. You know what that means? You know what it means when I say you made me feel angry? It means you have control over how I feel. That's literally what it means. You have control over how I feel. Like, who has the right to have control over how you feel? Only you control how you feel. Khayy, if you're feeling angry, if you're feeling frustrated, own your emotion. Own it. And no one can make you feel anything without your permission. That's number 2. Number 3, step 3. So number 1, you've created the distance. You've created distance between stimulus and response. Number 2, you've taken responsibility for your emotion. Number 3, now we focus on our circle of influence. We put our energy on where it can make a difference. Okay? Instead of complaining about the things that we can't control, we think about things and we take action on the things that we can control. Then we go to step 4. Step 4, we anticipate and we prepare. You don't wait for the challenge to come. You think ahead. What is the possible situation? What is the possible scenario? And you start to do it, act accordingly. Step 5 is, like earlier with the example of Musa, I said, you want to create the environment that you want. A proactive father, a proactive husband facilitates the environment for a good marriage and for a good child to grow up. You don't just expect it to happen accidentally. No, you take initiative. And you say, if I want my son to be a qari of the Quran, then I must read the Quran in front of my son. If I want my son to be a person of morals and ethics and akhlaq and to not lie and to treat others with respect, then I must set the environment for that. And I take that ultimate responsibility. Look at this beautiful hadith by the Prophet. He says, the believer is like a bee, like a nahle. He says, he eats what is pure and wholesome, and he produces what is pure and wholesome. That is what a believer is. So you set the tone. For example, the brothers that work in offices or work in certain environments with other people, with sisters and whatever, the opposite sex, you set the tone. I don't accept that. I'm working by a principle. There are things that I don't accept in this environment. You set the tone of the relationship. If you want a marriage that emphasizes trust, loyalty, and respect, you set the tone. You start that. You start the trust, loyalty, and respect from within you. طيب. I'm going to conclude it there, boys, because I know it's been a while, and Allahu Akbar, it's already 10:12. I want you guys to take everything that we've spoken about tonight, and try and think about this over the next couple of days. Think about the circle of concern, circle of influence, and think about how you can start to embed this in your character. And remember, it's not going to be easy. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The journey is not going to be easy. To be a proactive individual takes. If you are proactive, you are going to stand out. You are going to be different in a positive way, of course, and it's going to be much more difficult. But a proactive person ultimately is a person that has more purpose, that is more fulfilled in life. And inshallah, the more responsibility you take, the more you are able to reap from yourself. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala baytihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin.